Can one fuselage enough over this guy?
Hello, my baby! Hello, my honey! Hello, my ragtime gal! Suddenly you've kissed my wife! Baby, my heart's on fire!
We review Leader Skyquake from Legacy Evolution. Skyquake was a character in the CGI Transformers Prime series, though he was more of a blink-and-you'll-miss-him cameo. So it's only befitting that his Legacy figure was a blink-and-you'll-miss-it on store shelves as well. So when the minions stumbled across this copy, they took the opportunity so that we could review it and see if it's worth the anguish that Hasbro put most of us through by not producing enough. See the windowless front with character art, the Evolution splash art on the side panel, photos of both modes on the back, and a teasing peek of his Evolution gimmick. More character art on the slanty side panel. Now let's get him out of this box and give him more screen time than he ever had through the entire Prime series. Out of box, Legacy Evolution Leader Skyquake comes with his instruction booklet. A gray Gatling gun weapon accessory. A translucent green weapon accessory that folds out to become a sword. Skyquake's ult mode is a fighter jet, supposedly patterned after the F-35 Lightning, but with obvious differences. The colors are a deep military green with silver highlights. There's some translucent green plastic as well, and some parts done in a kind of gunmetal gray. Since it's a leader figure, there's a bit of heft to it. All the parts and panels seem to tab together nicely, so there's nothing flopping around. From the top, the jet profile looks clean enough, but looking at it from the back, you can see where the robot legs begin. Turning him upside down, the squinched up M of the robot legs is even more pronounced. But after that, he seems plainish enough. Almost everything seems to be done in hard plastic, thank goodness. Nothing feels rubbery or bendable. Not even the smaller fins up near the cockpit. And there's plenty of detail in the sculpt, with ridgy lines aplenty, like you'd expect to see on a fighter jet or an X-Wing. For features, there's an opening cockpit with plenty of room for at least 2 pilots, if the pilots are the size of a grain of rice. There's flip-out landing gear at the front and the back, so he will sit level on flat surfaces. There are open 5mm ports on the front sides, 1 on the top of either wing, 1 on the back of each rear thruster, and 5 on the bottom with 1 under each wing, 1 where the back engines connect. Any of these ports can be fitted with the default weapon, or with any other compatible accessory. Yes, I know these clips on the top are meant for mounting the Legacy Needle Nose Deluxe figure, but I didn't get Needle Nose, so I'm not bothering. I already have a Voyager Mind Wipe with a Scout Skystalker, if I ever feel the need to play Jet Jenga. As for the default weapon, the Gatling gun is supposed to plug under a wing, but it makes it look unbalanced. Pegging it into the bottom center looks better, but makes it so that the back landing gear doesn't touch the ground. Bah! And this is Legacy Evolution, which means that they rigged up the weapons to have an Evo Fusion gimmick. You take the folded up sword and jam it into the back of the Gatling gun to serve as an energon clip of sorts. Skyquake's transformation has some unique aspects to it. First, de-accessorize and fold up the landing gear, front and back. These massive portions near the front untab and swivel out on these hinged armatures. Start to fold down the nose cone. The instructions tell you to fold it all the way back, but don't do it just yet, because there's a flaw with the engineering that needs to be accounted for. Take these rear tail fins and untab them from the jet engines. Then do the same with these larger wings. They untab and fold up. The tabs on these wings were the only things that keep the thrusters held in place. But that's just as well, because you take the plane, fold it upside down, then extend the legs out. Rotate the legs at the hips, and fold out the thighs and shins to form the robot legs. At the side of each leg you will see the other rear tail fin. It rotates up and folds in. You will see a tiny tab here on the shin with a corresponding groove on the fin itself. Those tab together and hold fairly well. Then flip out the front of the robot feet and rotate the leg so that the knees are pointing forward. Move up to the fuselage section where the arms are nestled. On a pair of ratchet joints, they click out and angle up until they're extended out laterally. Then with a series of folding hinges on the inside, they flip outward. Flip the plane around again. The rear section of the cockpit tabs underneath the plane wings. Tilt it down and they'll pop loose. When transforming to Alt mode, make sure that this ridgy section here is tucked underneath this groove here to hold the front and back of the plane together. But when transforming to robot mode, tab it down and pull it loose. Then each wing section untabs to separate them down the middle. Once the wing sections have been untabbed, flip the plane back around. The pelvis section is on a sliding joint. Pull it down slightly. There's this hinge down the middle on the side of each wing. Angle each half slightly. Invert the engine portion. You'll need to rotate the leg portions so that they are sideways, and with the slider joint extended, it will expose these hinged sections, which you use to angle each of the wings so that they are now behind the robot. Here's where things get gnarly. You remember how I said that you shouldn't tilt the nose cone down all the way? There's a reason for it. There's an armature hidden inside the cockpit section that you can't see. And these things, which are the pilot seat, need to be angled down slightly, because this whole section tucks up and fits inside the robot chest. But it won't do it unless the pilot section is angled down slightly, so that you have a kind of gray pyramid underneath the cockpit. Then you can fold up the nose cone and keep folding this entire section down until the nose cone budges up against the chest plate of the robot. You'll know you've done it right if the nose cone of the plane can touch the robot chest from the inside, but is still folded up double, so it's more or less flush up against the cockpit itself. This also triggers the dramatic head reveal. You'll see there's a slider joint here. Nudge the robot head forward. But how do you keep that whole cockpit nose cone back torso thing kept together? Well, that's what the slider joint is helping to accomplish. You'll see two tabs on the inside, and there are grooves underneath the nose cone. Rotate the robot leg so that the pelvis is facing towards the chest again. Then while bracing both the top and the bottom halves, push the groove and tabs together until they lock in place. These armatures, which connect to the plane wings, have tabs and grooves as well, and they won't line up unless that section is sticking out. They don't hold very firmly, but if you add additional support by folding in these arm panels, proper transformation will make sure that they fold flat and don't angle any further in. Angle each arm down. Flip out the robot fists from inside the forearms. There's also a folding panel with a tab and groove that connect and hold it all in place. The forearm and the shoulder are hinged. Unfold and extend them out. Then towards the back of the plane, make sure the robot cockpit is still angled so that it points out. Then angle the wing panels back down with the cockpit threaded through a hole in the back. It holds together by plugging and tabbing these sections together. And for his finishing move, swivel and angle down these shoulder pads. So it is possible to transform Skyquake without resorting to any kit bashing. But it's sort of a you have to do X before you can do Y routine. Don't ignore all the steps, fiddly though they may be. You will get a feel for it after the first or second attempt. Then it will be second nature to both transform Skyquake and to curse Hasbro for their crummy directions. Skyquake's robot mode is one of the first leader class figures in a while that actually seems big enough to be a leader class. Having never owned a Skyquake figure, I don't have a mental frame of reference regarding the Generation 1 accuracy, beyond the normal Google photos, or in his case, Generation 2. But this one was meant to be a legacy retooling of the Prime Universe version, and in that, they seem to have done a decent job. Robot Skyquake has the distinctive head with crests, the wing-a-ding backpack, and of course, the shoulder pads. They may not quite be as wide as the wings, but it's pretty darn close. There's light piping on the head, but it's the kind that doesn't really work unless you jam a flashlight right onto the piping zone. The more effective light piping is because of the transparent chest, coupled with his mostly empty gap-riddled torso. Shine the light back there, and Skyquake could guide Santa's sleigh. In the show, he was depicted as a tough bruiser. and this figure certainly looks like there's meat on his bones. It all proportions well, or at least uniformly. The legs are beefy, the arms are beefy, the torso looks robust enough to hold up all the chunky limbs. The only section that may seem a bit thin is where the waist joins to the hips. That zone doesn't seem as fulsome. Maybe it's because we've peeked under the hood while trying to pull off this mysteriously difficult torso transformation. But aside from the hollowness in the chest, which we all know is there, the robot mode has no visible gappage. Even the forearms are nicely covered, and the jet fins on the backs of the shins are a worthy attempt. The robot mode has 2 open ports on his back behind the wings, and one on his backside, along with a mini 3mm port to use with holding stands. There's one on the side of each shin, and one on the bottom of each foot. There's of course one open port in each fist, and one underneath each forearm, one on the top of each shoulder pad. All of these can be used to mount his default weapons, or with any accessory that has a 5mm peg. As for the Evo Fusion gimmick, towards the center of the Gatling gun, you flip up this little armature, which has a 5mm peg, then inserting the Gatling gun into his fist from underneath, angle and rotate the secondary peg to fit into the other fist, so that he can hold his Gatling gun two-handed. It's Evo Fusion, baby! The head is ball-socketed. It will rotate 360 degrees. It is also hinged and will angle backwards quite a way. These shoulder pads get in the way, but they are separate from the arms themselves, so you can angle them. Without any obstructions, the arms would do a full 360-degree rotation. You can also use the transformation hinge to square the arms in and out slightly. Each shoulder is ratcheted, so the arms will angle up and down. There's an upper bicep swivel, double hinged elbows. In spite of all the wing kibble, full 360-degree waist rotation. Each leg will kick forward this far, and if it weren't for the wings, they'd do a full backwards rotation. The hips are soft ratcheted, and each leg will kick all the way out. There's an upper thigh swivel, double hinged knees, and as we've come to expect, an ankle pivot. In addition, the front of each foot will fold down slightly. So the articulation is mostly good. The feet could use more tilting ability. The arm panels tilt out of place too easily when rotating the shoulders, and the shoulder pads and wings are a constant source of annoying parts crashing. Standing at nearly 8 inches tall, here is Legacy Evolution Leader Skyquake, next to Leader Class Studio Series 86 Coronation Starscream. Here is Legacy Leader Class Skyquake, next to Titan's Return Leader Class Overlord. And here is Legacy Evolution Leader Class Skyquake, next to the Transformers RED line RC. Legacy Evolution Leader Skyquake was a rare figure in many areas, but is it good enough to take the time to track it down, or buy through online sources? Perhaps if you're a fan of Transformers that have jets as the alt modes, positives for Skyquake are that both modes look good, and hold together well if they are transformed properly. He's got big size and heft for a plane, and yet he doesn't look too big that it shouldn't be a jet. They actually gave it proper landing gear for a change. There are plenty of options to accessorize, good articulation in robot mode, and yes, if you like jets, then there's no reason why you shouldn't like this one. Negatives are that both modes have a lot of subtle tricks and steps that you need to pull off in just the right sequence to make sure everything holds together. The chestal area is a big hurdle if you don't do everything just right. So the transformations could be frustrating for those who like them to be easy and effective. The robot arms don't tab in well at the shoulders. The shoulder pads themselves get in the way a lot. The feet could have used some heel spurs for better stability, and as is often the case with this particular line of figures, the Evo Fusion gimmick is pretty lame. When separated, the sword accessory is pretty flimsy, and the instructions for this figure are perhaps the most misleading of any I've seen. I had to resort to alternative sources to learn how to pull off the transformation. Still, as leader figures go, Skyquake isn't a bad figure per se. He's just not as good as others I've handled. I give Legacy Evolution Leader Skyquake 6 out of 10 deaths. He was barely in one episode. Maybe they should have called him Diequake.
If you refuse me, honey, you lose me. Then you'll be left alone, oh baby, telephone, and tell me I'm your own.